Thank you for joining us on this United Nations International Day for the right to the truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of the victims. This day is not just a commemoration, it reminds us of our responsibility to confront injustice whenever it arises, to listen to victims' voices, and to stop early signs of persecution from escalating into something much worse. I want to start away from Taiwan, in a place where ignoring those early signs led to catastrophic consequences. In February 2026, last month, I traveled to Rwanda. I went, as I mentioned it in the last webinar, partly to see the region where the last mountain gorillas live, partly to meet religious minorities, but mostly to understand the legacy of the 1994 genocide of the Tutsi. Nothing prepares you for Rwanda. Kigali, the capital, feels serene, orderly, and almost disarmingly peaceful. Yet beneath that calm lies a memory so vast that it seems to change the very air around you. Some estimates put the number of victims at 1 million. At the Kigali Genocide Memorial, where over 250,000 victims are buried, silence carries a heavy weight. It is not the silence of peace, but of remembrance, dense and almost physical. I visited both the main memorial in Kigali and the regional one in Musanze. In Kigali, a woman who runs a Christian school shared her story in a quiet, steady voice. Her parents had 11 children, but only she and one brother survived. She spoke without bitterness, as if her words had been shaped by years of telling. That experience led her to dedicate her life to helping children, especially orphans. Most of her students today are too young to have lost their parents in 1994, but she sees in every child a life that could have been lost, and in every classroom a small act of defiance against the darkness she endured. In Musanze, I met the memorial's caretaker, a man named Fidel, whose passion for preserving memory shone through every word. He took us through the old Court of Appeal in Ruhengeri, as Musanze was once called, where in April 1994, over 800 Tutsi gathered after being promised protection. Instead, they were tear-gassed, bombed, and killed. Many were teachers, medical workers, agronomists, civil servants, ordinary people who believed the state would keep them safe. The building still seems to echo with their tragic presence. The most powerful testimony came from the man who guided me throughout the week. His parents and many relatives were all killed in 1994. He told this story with a calmness that felt almost intentional, as if he had learned to carry the story delicately. His family fled to the famous Saint Pierre Catholic Church in Kibuye on Lake Kiva, believing, as generations had before, that the church walls would protect them. He was 5 years old. Families barricaded the doors and held out for nearly a week with only stones and wooden spears. Even he, a small child, threw stones. When soldiers arrived with guns, their resistance crumbled. Some priests tried to help, others opened the doors to the killers. His family escaped briefly, only to be betrayed again. He and his little brother squeezed through a small window and ran. Their mother, unable to feed, was captured, raped, and killed. Their father, knowing he would be tortured, filled his pockets with stones and walked into Lake Kivu, never to be seen again. The boys survived because a woman who risked everything to hide them. Eventually, French soldiers helped them cross into Zaire. After the genocide, they were returned and adopted by a Pentecostal family. Years later, this man visited the children of the man who killed his mother. They ran a small tourist boat service on Lake Kivu. He forgave them. He even directs business their way. We are from the same village, he said. If we don't rebuild a normal life, who will? Rwanda forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. It shows us how institutions, churches, courts of law, political parties can either resist evil or enable it. It demonstrates how ordinary people can become killers, while others, equally ordinary, can become heroes and saviors. It makes us realize that human rights violations do not start with machetes and machine guns. They start with words, stereotypes, rumors, bureaucratic decisions, and silence. This brings me to the Rome model, which I proposed in 2011 when I was the representative of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, for combating racism, xenophobia, and religious discrimination. The Rome model is straightforward, but its implications are significant. It states that human rights violations follow a predictable pattern, a slippery slope. They begin with intolerance, a cultural and media issue. A group is mocked, stigmatized, or depicted as dangerous. Then comes second, discrimination, when governments or courts treat that group differently. Finally, if unchecked, it leads to third, persecution and violence. It resembles an avalanche. Once it picks up speed, it becomes unstoppable. The only effective strategy is to intervene early, before discrimination hardens into policy and the persecution becomes accepted. This is why the Tai Ji Men case matters today. No one died in the Tai Ji Men case. There were no mass killings, no machetes, no mass graves. Yet the logic of the Rome model is clearly present. Tai Ji Men's Shifu and Ditse were targeted for ideological reasons. False accusations were created against them. Some were detained and mistreated. Their reputation was attacked. Their property was taken. Courts eventually cleared them of all charges, including tax evasion and even the ridiculous claim of blackmail. Yet bureaucratic persecution continued, fueled by greed, and by the reluctance of some officials to acknowledge their mistakes. This is how human rights violations start. Not with violence, but with life. Not with bloodshed, but with administrative abuse. Not with genocide, but with the quiet erosion of dignity. The United Nations International Day of May 24 reminds us that victims of injustice, whether in Rwanda or Taiwan, deserve truth, dignity, and justice. It reminds us that we must stop the early stages of persecution before it escalates. It reminds us that the dignity of every human being is non-negotiable. The Tai Ji Men case is not Rwanda, but Rwanda teaches us that no society is immune to injustice. The Rome model shows us that injustice grows if left unchecked. The lesson of May 24 is that truth is the first step towards restoring dignity. As we begin this webinar, let us honor the victims of gross human rights violations everywhere. Let us listen to the truth. Let us defend the dignity of those who have suffered. And let us ensure that what happened in Rwanda and what happened to Tai Ji Men never happens again to anyone, anywhere. And with these words, we will now watch a much more pleasant video, which is not about genocides or persecution, but it's about 1 year of Tai Ji Men activities for peace, love, and conscience, the year 2025.
Countless horses galloping forward, carrying hope to the world.
At the beginning of 2025, Tai Ji Men's greeting card, themed on the peacock, consuming 100 poisons and emitting fragrance, encourages people to refine themselves in adversity and keep a kind heart. With this spirit, Tai Ji Men Shifu and DZ move forward step by step through every month of 2025 and every moment along the way. Let us look back and retrace the footsteps of peace throughout 2025.
In February, we hosted the Lunar New Year gathering. Through multicultural performances and the sharing of rice balls and the 5 blessings, everyone was deeply moved by the rich festive spirit and joy of the season. Participants were also invited to quiet their hearts and offer prayers, welcoming the transformative year of the snake with hope and faith.
In early April, people around the world observed the 6th International Day of Conscience, including celebration events held in Vienna, Austria, shared the good news that the UN had designated July 12th as the International Day of Hope. Soon after, the delegation traveled to Saudi Arabia to conduct cultural exchanges. The sound of the bell of world peace and love reverberated throughout the desert.
In mid-May, during the 28th Eurasian Economic Summit in Turkey, the Marmara Group Foundation presented the Jack Kami Love and Peace Award to Dr. Hong in recognition of his contributions to promoting world peace. Soon after, the bell of world peace and love rang in New York City, inspiring people to build a more trustworthy and prosperous world.
In June, the Third World Conference for Religious Dialogue and Cooperation was held in North Macedonia. International scholars expressed strong recognition and support for Tai Ji Men's efforts to promote a culture of conscience.
From July 1st to 4th, the Cultural Goodwill Delegation participated in National Day celebrations in Canada and the United States. They conveyed warm friendship and heartfelt congratulations.
Hello to Tai Ji Men and Happy Canada Day. It's gorgeous, beautiful, and a wonderful Chinese tradition.
July 12th, 2025 marked the first International Day of Hope. People were encouraged to embrace hope in times of adversity. May our actions be empowered, and may the world prosper together.
Conscious.
In mid-July, the delegation also visited 5 countries in the Caribbean, spreading the message of love and peace.
On August 1st, Dr. Hong's birthday, a new Tai Ji Men chapter was officially inaugurated in Toronto, Canada. In his speech, A World of One Heart, Peace and Sustainability, Dr. Hong reaffirmed his original aspiration and steadfast commitment. Later in August, the delegation visited the peaceful nation of Brunei, the 120th country on their global journey of peace, marking a significant milestone alongside Shifu. There, young Deezy achieved personal breakthroughs while spreading joy and kindness throughout the community.
In September, Tai Ji Men academies in various regions around the world held anniversary celebrations. They shared the secrets of staying healthy and happy with people from all walks of life, coming together in joyful celebration. In observance of the International Day of Peace on September 21st, events were held in both Taiwan and the United States, online and in person. Through talks, art, singing, and bell-ringing ceremonies, the spirit of peaceful coexistence was shared and promoted.
At a time when anxiety and uncertainty weighed heavily on the world, on October 13th, Dr. Hong delivered a speech titled, Supporting Global Mental Health with Love and Conscience. He invited people around the world to rediscover inner peace and care for one another.
Let us begin with ourselves. Just 5 minutes of self-reflection each day can help clear our minds and allow us to listen to the call of conscience deep within. Guided by conscience, we gain clarity. We recognize what is truly good for ourselves and others.
In November, at the 26th International Conference of Chief Justices of the World in Lucknow, India, Dr. Hong delivered a speech titled Transparency and Integrity, Core Governance Principles for a Sustainable Future. He encouraged everyone to act with conscience, build trust through action, reform systems, and help the world turn a corner.
At the beginning of 2026, the Cultural Goodwill Delegation set out for 3 countries in the Caribbean to carry out cultural exchanges, sharing the positive spirit of martial arts to stop conflict and promote goodness, and inviting local communities to endorse declarations for global peace and sustainability. As the footsteps of love and peace reach more corners of the world, hope grows and flourishes, and new chapters are always waiting to unfold.
We extend our heartfelt thanks to all the distinguished guests and friends who have accompanied us throughout this remarkable journey. When good people come together, positive energy grows and new possibilities unfold. Looking ahead, let us continue to encourage one another and move forward hand in hand as Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy celebrates its 60th anniversary, embarking together on the next chapter of this new journey.
Thank you to all those who cooperating in producing this beautiful video. And now I introduce the first speaker of the first session, Alessandra Micarelli, a human rights lawyer based in London, who is also the president of the European Federation for Freedom of Belief. So, Alessandro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Massimo. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. My presentation is on Tai Ji Men in Taiwan, an unresolved human rights concern. If we want to understand the Tai Ji Men case, we inevitably return to that one day, December 19, 1996. You will not find this date in school books, as it has not yet become a national holiday. But for those who monitor freedom of religion and belief in Taiwan, it marks a clear turning point. On that day, prosecutors and police raided Tai Ji Men. Dr. Hong Tao-tse, his wife, and several Dizi disciples were detained. Their detention was not a quite procedural act. That evening, images of Dr. Hong, his wife, and the disciples were broadcast across national TV, framed and commented on as if they were criminals. There were no tanks in the streets this time, no curfew, no bodies left in rivers as in darker chapters of Taiwan's past. But there were detention cells and a carefully constructed story of fraud and superstition. Someone reading the case files today might find parts of the indictment grotesque, but behind every page were the lives of men and women suddenly taken from their families and homes. They were interrogated for hours under pressure, detained in poor conditions, and exposed to the public in ways that marked their lives long after that moment. From the very beginning, the core of the case concerned basic rights and how easily they can be set aside and abused. The right to liberty, security, and humane treatment of detainees, rights later solemnly reaffirmed when Taiwan incorporated the ICCPR into its domestic law, were already at stake. For Tai Ji Men, these rights were not even acknowledged in theory. They were completely ignored and disregarded. To fully understand the case, we must first understand what Tai Ji Men is. Tai Ji Men is a menpai that teaches Qigong, martial arts, self-cultivation rooted in traditional Chinese culture. Its disciples, called Dizi, often describe themselves as an energy family. They learn from their Shifu, the Grand Master, Dr. Hong Tao-tse. They train, perform, and travel, carrying a message of conscience and peace that lies at the heart of Dr. Hong's teachings. Within this spiritual relationship, traditional red envelopes offered to the Shifu are a long-established way of expressing gratitude and respect. There are no tariffs, no menu of services. The red envelopes as a gesture deeply rooted in Eastern culture and belief. However, in the case of Tai Ji Men, the National Taxation Bureau decided to reinterpret this practice and its implications. Based on this new interpretation, it treated the offerings as tuition fees, taxable as the income of a non-existing cram school. By challenging this long-standing Taiwanese tradition, something more than a tax category changed. A spiritual practice was reinterpreted and redefined in bureaucratic terms, as if the heart of the Shifu-Dizi relationship could be reduced to a commercial transaction. International human rights bodies, including UN special rapporteurs, have repeatedly warned that financial and registration rules can be twisted and misused to the detriment of specific religious or spiritual communities. On paper, the rules may appear neutral, but in practice, they may target only one group or a few and become instruments of discrimination. This is also a way to put freedom of religion or belief under pressure, even if no one ever uses the words ban or prohibition. In practical terms, however, the effect can be the same. In 2007, after 10 long years, Taiwan Supreme Court finally acquitted Dr. Hong and the other Tai Ji Men members. No fraud, no tax evasion had ever existed. The judges of the highest Taiwanese court emphasized that the disciples' offerings were gifts, not taxable tuition, and ordered compensation for the time the defendants had unjustly spent behind bars. In a normal system governed by the rule of law, this is where the story would end. The highest judicial body has spoken, innocence has been confirmed, and life should just go on. In the Tai Ji Men case, however, the story did not end there. What followed shows how a discredited theory can survive in a hidden corner of the state. Despite the Supreme Court decision, parts of the tax administration clung to their own narrative. They had issued a series of tax bills based on the tuition theory. Bit by bit, and often only after losing in court, the National Taxation Bureau cancelled almost all of those assessments, reducing the payable amount to zero. It did so step by step, rather than all at once as it should have, as if each correction were a concession rather than a duty following the Supreme Court's ruling. Eventually, one by one, all the bills were corrected to zero, except one. The bill for the year 1992 was kept alive, protected by fabricated technical arguments and claims about questionable deadlines. On one side, therefore, stood a Supreme Court ruling that there had been no tax evasion. On the other hand, an administrative body insists that at least for 1 year, its view should prevail. International law does not only require states to hold fair trials, it also requires them to provide effective remedies. Article 233 of the ICCPR is very explicit. The competent authorities shall enforce such remedies when granted. A remedy that leaves the core injustice standing, simply shifting it from the criminal arena to the tax arena, is not a remedy at all. It is a change of scenery that perpetuates the abuse. The consequences of the National Taxation Bureau's distorted vision and actions are most clearly seen in what happened to Tai Ji Men's sacred land. Tai Ji Men purchased land to build a self-cultivation center, a place of spiritual and educational significance. This land became the target of enforcement for the 1992 tax bill. It was seized, nationalized, to cover an amount based on a theory that courts had just rejected for all the other years. Human rights law protects the peaceful enjoyment of property, prohibits all forms of discrimination. Many religious and spiritual communities in Taiwan receive offerings. They are not treated as commercial businesses. They are not dragged into decades of tax litigation. The persistence of the tax war against Tai Ji Men long after the criminal acquittal raises fundamental questions about equal treatment and makes us wonder what lies behind this witch hunt. When land considered sacred by a community is nationalized based on a disputed tax bill, especially considering the Supreme Court's final judgment, we are not discussing a minor administrative dispute. We are touching both property rights and freedom of religion or belief. International bodies usually ask whether such interferences are necessary and proportionate. In this case, given that the alleged tax offense lacked criminal basis and that all the other parallel bills were corrected to zero, the idea that there is a compelling public interest in maintaining the last assessment and keeping that land becomes exceedingly difficult to defend. It cannot be denied that Taiwan has made significant improvements across many areas since the end of the authoritarian regime. Martial law is gone, people can choose their leaders in free elections, and presidents publicly apologize for wrongs that for decades could not even be mentioned. The two main United Nations human rights covenants have been incorporated into Taiwan's domestic law, despite Taiwan not being a member of the UN. In several old cases, families have finally received some form of compensation. These are not mere details, they signal a genuine change of era. But a transition is not complete simply because official reports are published and museums or memorials are inaugurated. It is also measured by how a society reacts when a case born in the democratic years remains unresolved and continues to harm those involved. When we talk about truth, reparation, accountability, and guarantees of non-repetition, we should not think of abstract checklists. We should ask very simply, do we see these things happening in real cases like that of Tai Ji Men? In the Tai Ji Men story, some pieces of this puzzle are indeed in place. The Supreme Court has already ruled that there was no fraud or tax evasion, and its judges recognized that the detentions were unjust. But another part of the truth has never been clearly acknowledged, that tax instruments were used as a continuation of the repression. As for reparation, it remains incomplete. The land intended for a self-cultivation center has been taken and not returned, and a straightforward public statement restoring Tai Ji Men's good name has still not been made. Those responsible for the violence and abuses that sustained the red envelope taxation campaign have not been required to answer for their actions publicly. As long as this chapter remains unresolved, the solemn words, "This must never happen again," remain more a hope than a guarantee. The Tai Ji Men case has now become a test for the rule of law in Taiwan. The fact that a tax bill discredited by Taiwan's highest court still produces effects, that sacred land has not been given back to Tai Ji Men, and that nobody within the system seems to pay a price for ignoring a Supreme Court ruling, suggests that Tai Ji Men is not enjoying the same level of protection as others. Scholars sometimes speak of abusive legalism, when neutral laws are used in practice to achieve discriminatory results. Here the tools are tax assessments and enforcement procedures. The result is the prolonged continuation of a politically motivated injustice. For all these reasons, the Tai Ji Men case cannot be described as closed, either legally or morally. The highest courts have already fulfilled their role. What has not followed is a corresponding change in the behavior of the tax authorities and other administrative bodies. The Constitution and the two UN covenants are part of Taiwan's legal system. Yet, their promises have not been fully delivered to this peaceful community. Freedom of religion or belief is still denied by a tax narrative that should have ended years ago. Property rights, equality before the law, and the right to an effective remedy remain compromised as long as the nationalization of the sacred land remains unreversed and the 1992 assessment continue to exist on paper. Simply repeating that all legal avenues have been exhausted is, in this context, little more than a way to avoid responsibility and accountability. Because the heart of the problem is not a lack of court decision, but the reluctance of certain offices to obey them. At this point, only a political decision from legislators, from the executive, or from the head of state can align administrative practice with what the judiciary and the human rights covenants already require. We speak about Tai Ji Men in Taiwan and abroad as friends of Taiwan. We care about its democratic achievements and understand its vulnerable position in the region. And precisely for that reason, we do not look the other way. Closing the Tai Ji Men case fairly and definitively would not only repair a long-lasting injustice, it would send a strong and simple message to the world. In today's Taiwan, bureaucrats are not above the Constitution and the courts. And human rights are measured not only in speeches and anniversaries, but in how the state treats one specific minority community that has already heard the word innocent from its Supreme Court. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Alessandro. And now the second speaker of the first session, Carolina Maria Kokoska, who is a lecturer, but now in fact a professor at Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Poland.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. March 24 marks the United Nations International Day for the Right to Truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of victims. It reminds us that truth is not merely a historical or academic notion, but a living element of social reality, a foundation of justice, and a condition for restoring dignity to those who have suffered. It is also a day that calls on us not only to remember, but to take responsibility. I want to begin with a personal reflection on memory. When I was in high school, a friend once asked me whether I kept a special folder at home with the most important documents, something I would know to take with me if I ever had to flee. What a question! Of course I did. I had a case for documents and a small pouch with a few pieces of gold jewelry. As a child, I have often been told that in the event of a fire, a sudden evacuation, or war, these were the items I should take. It was she who made me realize that this was neither obvious nor normal, that not everyone grows up with such instructions in the background. I was surprised. I asked others, and it turned out that many of my peers in southern Poland had never been raised with the idea that they might one day need to flee. For them, it was not a part of everyday life. And yet, both of us had internalized it, she, with Jewish roots, and I, as the granddaughter of a woman who survived the Second World War as a child in the occupied Warsaw. In our homes, the past lived not only in stories, but in emotions, in unspoken tensions, in ways of thinking about safety and threat. Memories of horrific events felt vivid, almost our own. Stories of violence, fear, and loss could be recalled as familiar images. With time, I understood that this was more than family storytelling. It was part of a broader, well-documented phenomenon, the intergenerational transmission of experience, not only of historical facts, but of emotions, perceptions, and reflexes. Being prepared to flee, living with a sense of impending crisis, what we had taken as normal, later revealed itself as a trace of experiences that were not ours, yet shaped our worldviews, our sense of security, and our fears. This leads to a broader reflection. Traumas and human rights violations reach far beyond what might appear. They do not end when violence stops or when a conflict is declared over. In a sense, they outlive the victims, persisting across generations. Stories and fears are inherited, sometimes explicitly, sometimes almost imperceptibly. This is why truth is essential. It is an inalienable right of those who endured violations. It allows us to name what happened, to restore dignity, and to create space for accountability. Without truth, the past remains unresolved, and the mechanism that produces violations may reappear. Sadly, these mechanisms are often simple. Exclusion, stigmatization, the construction of a group as alien, dangerous, or other. These processes recur across historical and cultural contexts. The role model proposed by Professor Introvigne suggests that human rights violations follow a predictable pattern. They begin with language, with labels, with the creation of distance, and then the consequences are tragically foreseeable. In my country, March 24th is also the National Day of Remembrance of Poles who rescued Jews under German occupation. The date marks the 1944 execution of the Ulma family by the German gendarmerie. Józef Ulma, his pregnant wife Victoria, their 6 children, and the 8 Jews they were sheltering. Gouda Greenfeld, Lea Didner and her young daughter, and Saul Goldman with his 4 sons. This story remains one of the most poignant testimonies of courage, but also of the brutality of a system that punished even the smallest acts of solidarity. In 1995, the Ulma family was posthumously recognized as righteous among the nations. The symbolic act restores memory, but it cannot undo the tragedy. If anything, it underscores the crucial importance of acknowledging the truth early. Human rights violations never belong solely to the past. They are not a closed chapter to be shelved. Not all violations take the form of atrocities or armed conflicts. Some are embodied in administrative decisions, in the misuse of legal systems, or in the stigmatization of entire social or religious groups. They may involve the long-term erosion of dignity, the undermining of reputation, or the construction of narratives portraying victims as other, dangerous, or untrustworthy. When the state institutions reinforce such narratives, their consequences can be profoundly destructive. This is why it is so essential not only to remember the past, but also to recognize similar mechanisms in the present. The right to the truth concerns not only events from decades ago, it also applies to situations unfolding now, often less visible, yet no less real. One such case is that of Tai Ji Men in Taiwan. This story, ongoing for more than a quarter of a century, shows how easily a legal system can be used against citizens and how long and difficult the path toward justice can be. To this day, justice has not been fully achieved. One of the most disturbing moments occurred in 1996 when a widespread media campaign portrayed the movement as a dangerous cult, creating an atmosphere of fear and prejudice. This was accompanied by actions from law enforcement, police raids, searches, and asset seizures conducted in the presence of the media, amplifying public stigmatization. During these events, Dr. Hong, his wife, and 2 Daisy were detained, an experience deeply traumatic for them and destabilizing for the community. Another symbolic moment came in 2020, when land belonging to Tai Ji Men was nationalized, a place of profound spiritual and cultural significance. It had been prepared over the years as a space for practice, reflection, and community. Its loss was felt not only in legal terms, but also on personal and identity level. The Tai Ji Men case illustrates a broader problem: how institutions can perpetuate injustice even in the face of evidence, court rulings, or international criticism. It also highlights the importance of international solidarity and the need to reaffirm that human rights are universal, regardless of geography, culture, or political system. Today's meeting, therefore, is an opportunity to reflect on how we, as societies and as an international community, respond to contemporary human rights violations. It requires attentiveness, the ability to recognize such violations, and the willingness to name them clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina, and that concluded the first session. And now I will pass the podium to Willy Fautré, who will introduce the movie, the video opening the second session, and then the second session itself. Willy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Massimo. And as you said, so we will now see a video devoted to a tax issue in Canada, where several tax officials may face a very severe punishment.
Illegal tax officials in Canada face severe punishments. Tony and Helen are a young married couple who own and run bars, motels, and restaurants in Vancouver, Canada. Worried that the bank would no longer accept the old notes, they turned all of the old $100 and $50 notes that had been in the safe deposit box for the past 30 years into cash and deposited them into the account. The tax office was surprised when they discovered a big sum of money had been deposited into their accounts without notice. They determined that the two had hidden their business earnings, charged them with 21 counts of tax evasion, and worked with prosecutors to compel a guilty plea. The court discovered the truth after a 5-year investigation and declared all charges against them to be false. Tony, on the other hand, has been plagued by insomnia, excessive drinking, and smoking, and his health has been ruined as a result of these false accusations. Helen has become scared of other people's suspicious looks, to the point where she is hesitant to enter her own restaurant. Tricia, their daughter, even changed her last name to avoid being affiliated with criminality. Despite their innocence, the couple claimed they had been wronged and went to court to sue the prosecution, CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and the tax investigator. These officials, according to the Supreme Court, covered up and falsely reported evidence, maliciously used the state's judicial machinery to persecute innocent people, exploited the unequal power between the state and individuals, and violated the people's basic rights, and must be strongly accused and punished. As a result, the Tax Bureau was ordered to pay the couple $750,000 Canadian in damages for malicious prosecution, as well as an additional $300,000 Canadian per person for irreparable reputational damage. Litigation costs of around $348,000 Canadian, totaling nearly 1.7 million Canadian dollars. Despite the large settlement, their lives were flipped upside down a long time ago, and the two eventually divorced, leaving the family broken and unable to reunite. Government officials should not treat citizens as thieves or bully them in the name of public power. Despite the fact that being in the public service makes it easy to practice The judiciary is the last line of defense for justice. And officials should not use it as a thug to protect one another. Instead, they should respect the judiciary's conscience. Restore justice to the people, and be held accountable for law and discipline violations.
Yeah, malicious prosecution. This is really the case in Taiwan with the Tai Ji Men case. And of course, nobody was killed there in Canada, but there were so many victims, so many lives that were ruined. And the same with the Tai Ji Men case. And let's hope that one day in Taiwan, there will also be prosecution of those who were persecuting Tai Ji Men and the leaders of the movement and the Dizzy, who were also so-called collateral victims of this so long tragedy. And now I will make my own presentation that I have titled A Wall of Shame, a Memorial for and by Tai Ji Men is Needed. Each year, on the 24th of March, the international community observes the UN International Day for the right to the truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of the victims. At its core, this day is not only about remembrance, it's about resistance. Resistance against silence, against denial, and perhaps more insidiously, the deliberate construction of biased narratives by those responsible for human rights abuses. These narratives are not accidental misinterpretations of history. They are often calculated tools designed to obscure reality, evade accountability, and undermine the dignity of victims. The first part that I will investigate is the egregious human rights violations that took place in the past of Taiwan. Taiwan has not always been a democracy, far from it. For about 4 decades, it was a dictatorship. And that period was named White Terror. And afterwards, it took time to victoriously combat silence, denial, fake narratives, and lies about the dark pages of recent history. A few years ago, I visited the Jingmei White Terror Memorial Park in Taipei. It was originally a military law school before becoming a detention center and a prison where thousands of political prisoners were kept in cells, subjected to interrogation and torture. Today, the place is hosting the National Human Rights Museum. It is a memorial preserving the reality of the daily life of terror during about 40 years of dictatorship, the denial of justice, the reality of the detention conditions and the arbitrary executions, so that the future generations do not forget and never again write such dark pages in the future history of their country. In the yard of the former detention center, there is a wall of shame in which the names of thousands of political prisoners were engraved in stone. Records from the White Terror indicate that at least 140,000 people were imprisoned in total across Taiwan, with over 3,000 executed. The Taiwanese state has processed over 10,000 compensation applications from victims or their families related to this period. Concerning this past political crisis, truth concerning gross human rights violations was preserved and is now being transmitted to future generations. The dignity of the victims was sanctified with the official inauguration of the National Human Rights Museum and the recognition of the right to financial compensation. The second part of my presentation is titled in a strange way. It's Truth and Truth. But the first truth is in the singular with an uppercase. And the second one, truth, is in the plural with a lowercase. So I will develop this concept. The manipulation of truth is a recurring feature in the aftermath of gross human rights violations. Perpetrators, whether state actors, armed groups, or institutions, frequently reframe victims as aggressors or justify abuses under the guise of national security, stability, or cultural necessity. In doing so, they create an alternative version of reality that competes with and often overshadows the lived experiences of the victims. This distortion has profound consequences. When false or biased narratives dominate public discourse, they erode the possibility of justice. Courts, truth commissions, and international bodies rely on evidence, testimony, and collective acknowledgement of facts. When these are systematically undermined, the path towards accountability becomes obstructed. Even more troubling is the psychological impact on victims. To suffer abuse is devastating. To then see one's suffering denied or misrepresented compounds that harm, effectively silencing victims a second time. One of the most powerful tools in countering these distortions is the preservation and dissemination of truth. Documentation efforts by journalists, civil society organizations, historians, and survivors themselves serve as a counterweight to denial. Testimonies, archives, forensic evidence, and independent investigations create a body of knowledge that resists manipulation. These records are not merely historical artifacts, they are instruments of justice and memory. However, the struggle for truth is rarely straightforward. Power imbalances often determine which narratives gain traction. Governments and institutions responsible for violations may control media, control any influence, influence education systems, and restrict access to information. In such contexts, biased narratives can become institutionalized, shaping public perception for generations. Challenging these narratives requires not only courage, but sustained effort across multiple domains: legal, cultural, and political. Education plays a crucial role in this process. Teaching accurate histories of human rights violations fosters critical thinking and empathy. It equips future generations to question official accounts and recognize the signs of manipulation. Importantly, education that centers victims' voices helps restore their agency, ensuring that their stories are not overshadowed by the narratives of those who harmed them. Ultimately, the right to the truth is inseparable from the pursuit of justice and the restoration of dignity. It is a right that belongs not only to victims and their families, but to society as a whole. Understanding the reality of past abuses is essential for preventing their recurrence. When truth is obscured, the conditions that allowed violations to occur remained unchallenged. A few words about the dignity of the victims now. The dignity of the victims is deeply tied to recognition. Dignity is not an abstract concept. It is affirmed when individuals are seen, heard, and believed. Public acknowledgement of harm plays a critical role in restoring this dignity. It validates the victim's experience and affirms their status not as collateral damage or political inconvenience, but as individuals whose rights were violated. When perpetrators impose biased narratives, they strip victims of this recognition, reducing them to footnotes, or worse, casting them as participants in their own suffering. Now about Tai Ji Men and the necessity of having a memorial in Taipei. The Tai Ji Men case ticks all the boxes of my general reflections about the rights to establish, to preserve, to transmit, and to share the truth with a capital T concerning violations of human rights to the future generations. Previous speakers have recalled in detail the ordeal they have been going through for about 35 years. For Tai Ji Men and for the sake of the victims of the National Taxation Bureau, I have a bold proposal to make. Build a wall of shame in Taipei for the victims of the National Taxation Bureau as a public landmark. Build a wall of shame as a memorial in Taipei to honor all those who have been victims or who have fought for justice and write their names in marble forever. Build a wall of shame in Taipei, mirroring the National Human Rights Museum. Build a wall of shame as a new sacred place, as a place for your mouth commemoration events. Thank you very much for your attention. And now I will open the second session, which is usually devoted to the disease. And so we will again listen the voices and the reflections of the disease about the topic of the day. And the first disease is Lana Tien, an elementary school English teacher. The floor is yours, Lana.
Good day to the host, our panelists, and our online audience. My topic for today is the courage to embrace the truth, looking at the Tai Ji Men case and our educational mission from the perspective of the UN Right to the Truth Day. So truth is an empowering and healing force. We embrace it for the past, the present, and the future. This is the quote from United Nations and the future. Secretary General Antonio Guterres. These words are simple yet carry profound weight. They tell us that whether for a society or an individual, only by facing what truly happened can wounds be healed. And why do we need a right to the truth day? March 24th is the United Nations International Day for the Right to the Truth concerning gross human rights violation and for the dignity of victims. It's a long name, but its underlying meaning is profound. It was established to honor Monsignor Oscar Alfonso Romero of El Salvador. On this day in 1980, Monsignor Romero was assassinated while celebrating Mass because he had long spoken out for the vulnerable and bravely condemned human rights violation by the government at the time. It wasn't until 13 years later and the Truth Commission's report officially recorded this historical fact. This tells us that victims and their families have the right to know the complete truth of the events, the specific circumstances, and who participated in them. This is not just for justice, it is even more so to restore the victims' rightful dignity. Without the truth, all relief and compensation are merely cold legal procedures that cannot truly heal and trauma. Taiwan's legal and tax trial, Truth and Justice in the Tai Ji Men case. Returning to Taiwan, we also have the fabricated Tai Ji Men case, often referred to by scholars as the legal and tax 228. This is a key indicator of whether Taiwan's democratic rules of law has generally progressed. This case began during 1996 political purge targeting religions and spiritual groups, although the Supreme Court determined in its third and final ruling in 2007 that Tai Ji Men was innocent and owed no tax, and confirmed that the red envelope given by Dizi to their shifu were given a third tax expense. A baffling deadlock emerged in terms and administrative taxation. Same fact and evidence. 5 years are fine, but 1 year is taxed. The National Taxation Bureau later corrected the tax bill for 5 years to 0, but singled out the 1992 tax bill. Stormbolin claimed that because a court had reached a final decision on it, it could not be overturned. In fact, the Supreme Administrative Court explicitly stated in the 2080 judgment that the 1992 ruling failed to consider new facts and evidence, confirming that the 1992 decision was incorrect. Land auction off in 2020. Despite knowing this was a flawed tax bill, the government forcibly auctioned off Tai Ji Men's land intent for a cultivation center in Miaoli. International attention. Italian scholar Massimo pointed out that this is a typical case of human rights violation in Taiwan's post-authoritarian era, since the other years were proven to be gifts. According to the principle of consistency, the erroneous 1992 tax bill should also be revoked. In the latest development of 2026, we see more experts and scholars stepping forward to criticize the tax authorities for copying data from the investigation bureau without conducting their own investigation, for such an administrative act that is invalid from the beginning. And the resulting erroneous tax bill, the government should take the initiative to revoke it, rather than leaving the victim to struggle painfully through legal procedures. As an elementary school teacher, I often wonder how to bring this seemingly rigid human rights issue into the classroom. In fact, this is the best form of civic education. We can guide our children to think about the following in our teaching. The courage of honesty. Through the story of the Monsignor Romero, we can help children understand that while telling truth is difficult, it protects justice. The grace to admit mistakes. We teach our children to apologize and correct their behavior when they make a mistake. Therefore, when an administrative agency make an error, shouldn't it also have the courage to self-correct? We can discuss why procedure regulation should not stand in the way of factual truth. Recognizing signs of injustice, that children learn the history behind the confiscation of Tai Ji Men's intent cultivation land. Let them know that human rights are not just slogans in textbooks, but precious assets that every generation must strive to protect. The concept we teach children today will determine the future landscapes of Taiwan. If they can understand that truth is source of all rights, then in the future, when they become leaders or civil servants in various fields, they will better know how to respect the dignity of every citizen. In conclusion, the right to the truth is not only about remembering the past, but also about protecting the future. The ongoing discussion of the fabricated Tai Ji Men case in 2026 reminds us Taiwan's transitional justice and legal and tax reforms have not yet completed their final mile. Only when the administrative citizen is willing to show courage and take the initiative to revoke illegal tax bills, when each of us is willing to care about the dignity of victims, and where teachers can pass on the power of truth in the classroom, will we truly put the spirit of the United Nations into practice? Let us embrace the truth together and create a fairer, more just society for the next generation. Thanks for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Lana, for sharing with us your reflection about how to extirp and transmit to young school children the values that have grown from the Tai Ji Men case for several decades. Civic education is an important part of the construction of the personality of young boys and girls for their future. The courage to be honest, the demeanor to admit mistakes, the capacity to detect injustice are certainly privileged values that will be useful in the lives of your pupils. And as a teacher, you have a huge responsibility to take care of that transmission. Thank you again, and good luck in your job. Number two, so on our list of Dizzy is Jovi Kang, a senior high school student. The floor is yours, Jovi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jovi Kang. It's a real honor to be a part on this forum. I'm excited to share my thoughts on this International Day from a perspective of high school student. I am a Tai Ji Men 弟子. Growing up, I was very shy and introverted. I easily feel scared and lacked the confidence. But my 师父, Dr. Hong Daozi, taught me to be brave. And at Tai Ji Men, my brothers and sisters always trust me and support me. This gave me a courage to speak up without worrying about what everyone thinks. Even now, I still get nervous sometimes, but I always remember my 师父's words. Every step is hard, but we can pass them one by one. It reminds me that there is always a way out. That is why I can stand here today and join this forum. As a student, human rights used to be just a word in a textbook. But as 太极门弟子, I have seen my 师父, Dr. Hong Daozi, lead us globally to promote culture of peace and love with conscience. He emphasizes that conscience, love, and peace are the very foundation of a harmonious world. He also says, the more people awaken their conscience, the safer our world will be. And the heart of Tai Ji Men is one simple word, truth. My Shifu teaches us to speak the truth, what is right, and find the real truth behind everything. Only then we can solve problems and protect human rights. This matches today's theme, that everyone has the right to know the truth about human rights abuses, and we must work together to stop this form and protect the dignity of victims. The world knows Tai Ji Men's effort for peace, and my Shifu is widely respected. But steadily, the great leader has faced a long-term legal and taxi persecution in his own beloved democratic country, Taiwan, for many years. He has been deeply wronged. In 1996, Tai Ji Men was falsely accused by prosecutors of fraud and tax evasion. At that time, my Shifu was even illegally detained for 159 days. 10 years later, the court finally cleared Tai Ji Men of all charges, declaring us innocent and not liable for many taxes. However, the National Taxation Bureau refused to follow the court's ruling and did not cancel the illegal tax bills. This unlawful process has lasted for 30 years. It has not only affected the life and human rights of many Dizi, but also caused the attention of international human rights groups. When people witness injustice and choose to look the other way, it goes against our conscience. The Tai Ji Men case is a test of conscience for Taiwan's society and government. Facing the clear legal mistakes and unlawful actions, are we willing to stand up for the truth? Are we willing to speak up for innocence? Any act against human rights is violence. Philosopher Hannah Arendt pointed out, when a government loses in its justice, it must rely on violence and lose to survive. If we can lack the courage to uncover the truth, we risk becoming part of the banality of evil. For me, finding the courage to speak was very hard. I can only imagine how much more courage it takes victims to face such huge darkness and to uncover the hidden truth. My Shifu has stood strong 30 years against unfair government actions. He does his because he helps to guide our society and the nation back to the right path, and to ensure that such injustice never happen again. This spirit of standing for the truth is exactly the essence and practice of Tai Chi Men culture. So, how do we make sure the truth is visible? I believe Shifu's idea of transparency and integrity are answered. When the system is open and the leader are not honest, the truth is covered up, and the victims are hurt again. Therefore, let's work together and build a culture of transparency and integrity in our society. Doing this, we protect everyone's right to know the truth. When the truth is in the light, our united power can stop violence and protect human rights and dignity. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Jovi. Human rights is not just a term in a textbook, you said, and you have realized that through the experience of the Tai Ji Men case. But awareness is not sufficient. The next step must be action, being the voice and the arm of the victims of injustice. You may doubt that you can, but be sure that wings will grow from your conscience to allow you to fly for the well-being of others. So believe in your capacities for action. Conscience and culture are the basics of civic education. And at the heart of culture is truth, with a capital T, the key word of today's event. Thank you for your contribution, Jovi. And now we will have Olivia Yen, an audiologist.
Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia, and it is a great honor to participate in today's forum. Today, March 24th, marks the United Nations International Day for the Right to the Truth, concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of victims. This day was established to commemorate Archbishop Oscar Romero, who sacrificed his life speaking out for human rights, and to remind the world that people have the right to know the truth. For the full truth is the remedy that heals wounds, and revealing the truth is the fundamental safeguard of the victim's dignity. I'm an audiologist working in a hospital, and my job is to help people with hearing loss overcome their communication difficulties and reconnect with the world. During my student years, my teachers often reminded us to treat patients as family. This is because hearing loss is often invisible, much like the victims of state violence in many countries, whose pain and injustices are frequently concealed beneath authoritarian or bureaucratic systems, making it difficult for others to perceive their inner loneliness and helplessness. Sound is the very delivery of emotion. When I work with people with hearing loss, it's not just about using tools gently and precisely. It's more about empathy. Hearing loss often leads to misunderstandings in communication, causing difficulties in interpersonal relationships and daily life, which in turn affects self-confidence and self-esteem. At that moment, listening carefully to what the patient says becomes crucial. When patients feel truly heard, it not only makes them feel understood, increase their confidence and cooperation, but also helps me perform my work more smoothly. Through this, I have come to realize that listening attentively is about helping them reclaim the truth and dignity of their connection to society. Whether in healthcare or human rights, hearing the voice of victims and seeing their hidden pain is the starting point of all healing. My 师父 Dr. 洪道子 always told his 弟子 to treat all people and things with conscience. Yet, this stand in stark contrast in certain officials in the Taiwanese government who have used legal and tax measures to persecute the Tai Ji Men, 师父 and deeds for 30 years. Archbishop Romero once said that, in his view, there are only two kinds of governments, one that respects human rights, justice, and conscience, and those who deny them. As a medical professional serving patients, I act with conscience and treat patients as if they were my own family. Similarly, all public servants who serve the people should have a heart that loves the people as their own children. However, the illegal enforcement of the fabricated Tai Ji Men tax case has shattered the most basic respect for human rights, let alone conscience. As early as 2010, Legislative Yuan public hearing, officials from the Ministry of Finance and the National Taxation Bureau of the Central Area had pledged on the spot to withdraw the illegal enforcement of the 1992 individual income tax and to resolve the fabricated Tai Ji Men tax case with 2 months. Yet they broke all their word. Taiwan prides itself on being a nation founded on human rights and even incorporate the 2 UN International Conventions on Human Rights into domestic law years ago in 2009. Yet the conduct of certain government officials runs completely against these principles, and they have faced no consequences under the rule of law. In recent years, Taiwan has been discussing and implementing transitional justice, a process in which revealing the truth is the core principle, with the aim of purging and lingering toxins of the authoritarian era. The observance of today's International Day is precisely the through implementation of transitional justice. Regrettably, however, Taiwan's current efforts at transitional justice have consistently failed to reveal the truth. This is because during the government's 2024 ceremony commemorating the 77th anniversary of the Tutuwai incident, a key event of Taiwan's White Terror era, it has publicly declared that there are only victims, no perpetrators. This goes against the core principle of the right to know the truth, because hiding the perpetrators means covering up the truth. The Tai Ji Men tax case is a case that has extended for 30 years and has been called the two-way incident of the tax realm by Taiwanese scholars. In 2007, the Supreme Court ruled that Tai Ji Men has no guilty, owed no taxes, and had not violated the Tax Collection Act. Furthermore, in 2009, Shifu and Dizi, who had been illegally detained, all received national compensation for unjust imprisonment. Since the truth has been established and the perpetrators are now clearly identified, why has the government failed to investigate further and punish those who broke the law? When administrative agencies take the lead in covering up their mistakes, when perpetrators are not required to take responsibility for their errors, and when officials who violated the law can even be promoted, this constitutes a secondary violation of the victim's dignity and a neglect of the right to the truth, advocated by the United Nations today. The truth should not be buried by the passage of time. If the Taiwanese government is serious about achieving transitional justice, the first step must be to reverse the fabricated tax case against Tai Ji Men, starting with a thorough review and correction of every error and violation throughout the entire process. The prosecutors and tax officials who instigate this case, as well as those who facilitate the various illegal procedures and receive reward bonuses, must be severely punished and stopped immediately. Conscience is the vital force that upholds all truth and dignity. It is also the engine that brings an end to all illegality and injustice. I urge the Taiwanese government to follow the example of Archbishop Romero, who cared for the poor and protect the vulnerable and act with conscience to implement transitional justice. We must honestly confront historical errors, reveal the truth about past persecutions, and sincerely review, reflect upon, and improve our actions. By ensuring that victims receive the justice and fairness they deserve, Taiwanese society will achieve true reconciliation and perpetrators will have the opportunity to seek forgiveness. At the point, the government will once again earn the trust of the people, Thank you all.
And thank you, Olivia, the audiologist. It's a noble activity to help people with a hearing loss. This handicap is often invisible for outsiders, much like institutional state violence in many countries, including in democracies. It's also violence. It's also invisible for outsiders. But the pain and the grievances of the victims of hearing loss are often concealed, but they are real. And you are aware of it because it's part of your professional expertise, and you can usually fix the problem partly or fully. The current Taiwanese government also needs an audiologist because its members are deaf to the complaints of the victims of the tax administration, including to the repeated calls for transitional justice of Tai Ji Men. For decades, that disease has been transmitted genetically, I would say, from government to government. And it's time to find a prosthesis which would allow them to recover their hearing capacity. And now I will give the floor to Helen Kuo, a retired civil servant. The floor is yours, Helen.
Thank you, William. Hello, everyone. I am a retired civil servant, served in public office for over 30 years. I once firmly believed that the government always acted in the right way and that all its actions were guided by the interests of the nation and its people. It was not until I became a victim of the Tai Ji Men false case, described by scholars as the 228 incident of tax realm, that I came to see clearly how the bureaucratic system persecutes citizens and tramples on human rights. On December 19, 1996, after work, I was heading to the Tai Ji Men Da'an Academy as usual. While having dinner at a nearby eatery, I saw a TV news report that prosecutor Ho Huan-ren, accompanied by a large number of investigators and armed police, stormed into the Da'an Academy, conducting a dramatic search. I was shocked and then rushed to the academy. My sisters and brothers of Tai Ji Men used to be warm and cheerful, were all anxious and unsure what to do next. During the investigation, under Ho Huan-ren's deliberate manipulation of the media, over 400 print reports and more than 70 false broadcasts by 12 television stations flooded the media. The pressure of prejudgment before trial caused immeasurable physical and mental harm to tens of thousands of Tai Ji Men and their families. During those days, I endured the questioning and the ridicule of friends, family, and colleagues. I could only suppress my inner indignation, telling them the truth wasn't as the media portrayed it. I truly got great benefit by practicing Tai Ji Men Qigong. But when I walked down the street in my practice uniform and heard a childish voice behind me, Tai Ji Men, raising goblins, my heart was broken. Ho Huan-ren's relentless media smear campaign against Tai Ji Men had even polluted the innocent minds of young children. I was frail and sickly from childhood. When I entered university, arthritis struck my hands and feet, severely disrupting my daily life. Both Western and traditional Chinese medicine could only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. In 1992, I was fortunate to become a Tai Ji Men 弟子, finally escaping the fate of being a sickly patient. Grateful to my Shifu for accepting me as a 弟子 and giving me a new life, I respectfully presented him with a traditional gift. But I never knew that this cultural custom would later cause Tai Ji Men to suffer such a great injustice. Through my Shifu's teachings, I found direction in life and was no longer lost. My Shifu is like a teacher and a father to me, never just a tutor-student relationship. The Ministry of Education and the course have stated that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school, and the National Taxation Bureau also acknowledges that Tai Ji Men is not a cram school. The gifts presented to Shifu by other 弟子 who entered Tai Ji Men in other years were considered gifts and tax-exempt income. Paradoxically, only the gift I presented in 1992 was treated by the National Taxation Bureau as cram school tuition fees. They refused to cancel the illegal tax bill and even colluded with the Administrative Enforcement Agency to forcibly auction off the land intended for our self-cultivation center and nationalize it. For me, this is not only heartbreaking, but also an immense insult. I have accompanied my Shifu on numerous visits to Australia, South Korea, Egypt, South Africa, and the United States, promoting the peaceful ideas of love and conscience. Government leaders and heads of state we met everywhere expressed deep admiration and appreciation for the positive global influence Tai Ji Men delivered. However, this martial arts and the self-cultivation empire, recognized internationally by people from all walks of life, has suffered miraculous human rights persecution in its own country for 30 years. Taiwan claims to be a democratic, free, and rule of law country. Yet some officials from the Ministry of Finance and the National Taxation Bureau have openly violated the law. Ignoring Supreme Court rulings, control yuan's corrections, legislative yuan's public hearings, and executive yuan's interministerial meeting resolutions. They have persecuted and trampled upon people's basic human rights, such as freedom of belief and property rights. Since having personally experienced the pain of persecution, our Shifu taught us to help the country get back on track, help people understand the truth, and prevent more people from experiencing such suffering. Therefore, I went with other Tai Ji Men 弟子 to Katagalan Boulevard and government agencies to petition and protest. This is not only for the reputation of and the rise of Tai Ji Men, but also in the hope that the country can have the courage to admit its mistakes, punish corrupt officials, and become a true, free, democratic, and rule of law country. I sincerely urge President Lai to fulfill his promise to safeguard human rights in Taiwan and for government officials to show their conscience and determination, withdraw all illegal tax bills, and return the land for our self-cultivation center. Thank you all.
And thank you very much, Helen. You have served, you said, in public office for over 30 years. And during 3 decades, in fact, I would say you were in the belly of the beast, as we say. I mean, the administration, but being unable from inside to redress the course of the bureaucratic systems and to hold the trampling of human rights. Maybe you will be in a better position now outside the belly of the beast to identify its weak points and vulnerabilities and to make it harmless. There is no retirement period, for people fighting for peace, love, and truth with a capital T. There is still a lot to do for you and for us, all of us, for the well-being of society. And thank you very much for your contribution. And now I will give the floor to Louis Chen, an AI consultant. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Willie. Hello, everyone. It is a profound honor to stand before you on this International Day for the right to the truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of victims. I stand here today with 2 identities. By profession, I am a high-tech AI consultant and attitude, and my entire work is built on sanctity of data, the precision of logic, and the pursuit of objective truth. In the world of artificial intelligence, we have a golden rules: capture in, capture out. If your input data is corrupted or fabricated, the most powerful system in this world will produce a failed result. But I also stand here as a survivor of a 13-year logical nightmare. My story began in 2010 with a legitimate United States patent licensing deal. After I honestly reported this claim, the Tax Bureau estimated, without a single shred of evidence, that I have 5 years of similar hidden income. When I fought back and won a criminal forgery case against the official involvement, the retaliation was brutal. In 2011, my properties were illegally auctioned without any notice. The assets within my properties were looted, and my social credit evaporated. The harassment found me everywhere. Tax officials called my employees to let me a tax eventer, caused me to lose my jobs. I was detained in police integrity room due to the demand from the administrative enforcement agency. And at one point, because I refused to provide more money, I was physically assaulted by plainclothes officers who had identified themselves in an alley with no cameras, leaving my hands and arms, which are my tools for work, temporarily useless. I only cleared my name in 2023 through the intervention of political allies and my own persistence. But the wreckage of my credit remains, and I have spent years working as a delivery driver just to survive and repay debts. I know what it feels like, but the state uses a lie to ask a person's existence. And that is why the Tai Ji Men case is so critical to the global fight for truth. When we examine gross human rights violations in the modern era, we often look for physical violence. But there's more silence on insidious form of violence: past persecution, The Tai Ji Men case is the most glaring example of this. In the world of finance and law, tests must be based on fact and evidence. The fact must have a paper trail, a clear cash flow showing income. However, in the Tai Ji Men case, the government's narrative was built on a vacuum. From day one, there was zero cash flow, zero evidence, and a real legal basis to prove that the red envelopes given to the shifu were anything other than traditional tax-exempt gifts from disciples. Imagine a system that looks at a gift and depends on uninvestigated information provided by the investigation group without a single evidence to support it. This status is a taxable tuition. It is the ultimate capture-in scenario. The authorities didn't just make a mistake, they manufactured a lie. They chose to ignore the truth because the truth didn't serve their agenda. This isn't just a technical error. It is a direct assault to the dignity of the Tai Ji Men shifu and the business. Why would the government ignore the truth for 3 decades? The answer is as old as time, greed and ego. In Taiwan, a systemic for the tax business system creates a toxic incentive for officials. When officials receive a tax bonus, the right to the truth is the first thing to be sacrificed. For years, we saw prosecutors and the tax officials violate legal norms in broad daylight. They didn't care about the judicial proceeding they were destroying. They cared about the forces and their defensive mentality of not daring to take responsibility. Even when highest curse in this land declared Tai Ji Men innocent of tax evasion, the tax bureau refused to hit the reset button. They continue to use the domestic enforcement agency to illegal and forcibly auction off Tai Ji Men's self-cultivation centers. When the state has financial interests in a lie, the truth becomes the enemy of the state. So, how do we keep our original intention in the face of such darkness? How do we continue to fight for fair tax and human rights? We do it by serving a higher guide, conscience. In Tai Ji Men, the Zhangmenren Grandmaster teaches that the heart must be the compass. All that we have doing today is for our advance, our shared stories, is a gift to the future generation. We are building a democracy model where the state is held accountable to the truth. If we can force the world to see the truth of the Tai Ji Men case, we provide a tunnel to hope for thousands of other victims who have no voice. In some authoritarian regions, tax laws are used for a weapon to force citizens into submission. By fighting for the truth here, we are fighting for victims everywhere. I would like to conclude with thought that it has guided me through my darkest hours. It comes from the American founding father, Thomas Jefferson. The truth is great and will prevail if left to herself. She is the proper and sufficient antagonist to error and has nothing to fear from conflict. But if the truth being suppressed by state, she cannot be left to herself. Truth needs us. She needs our voice for justice and fairness, our courage and our refusal to stay silent. Today, we stand for the dignity for the victims. We stand for the clarity of the truth. And we will not stop until the garbage out of the injustice is replaced by the truth of a fair and a righteous society. We are not only fighting for ourselves, we are fighting for the world. Thank you very much.
What a horrible experience you had, Louis. The tax administration was keeping you in its jaws and was about to swallow you alive without any sentiment at all. And that makes me think of that video that we saw at the beginning of this session and what had happened in Canada with those victims of the administration, tax administration as well. Fortunately, you could escape from the claws of the beast of the administration, tax administration, but with damaging after effects for a long time, as you said. You were very bold and really courageous in this unequal and painful fight, sticking to the moral principles of Tai Ji Men. And I will repeat what I said at the end of my presentation introducing this second panel, a memorial of shame with the names of the victims of the tax administration is urgently needed in Taiwan. And your name would certainly be on it. Because if the state suffers from severe hearing loss, as I said before as well, maybe it's not fully blind. And let's hope that there is still a possibility to find a solution. As it was said before as well, a solution coming from the political arena, because now everything could be in the hands of the president or of the politician, the minister in charge of those matters. Thank you to everybody, to all the disease who shared their personal experience about the topic of the day. And now I will give the floor back to Massimo to introduce the last part of this webinar.
Thank you, Willie. And now we have some concluding remark by Marco Respiti, who will present his conclusions and then introduce the last video of the afternoon.
Thank you, Massimo. Thank you, everyone, for this great privilege to conclude yet another webinar of ours in this very important series and on such an important and relevant day, the United Nations International Day for the Right to the Truth concerning gross human rights violation and for the dignity of the victims. Voci di Pace, Voices of Peace, is an Italian quarterly magazine and the official publication of the San Marino and Italian chapters of the Universal Peace Federation and the Women's Federation for World Peace International. Both are NGOs with general consultative status at the United Nations. These organizations were founded by Reverend Sun Myung Moon and his wife, Park Ja-han Moon, the South Korean couple who initiated the Unification Church, now known as the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. In the latest issue of the magazines, first quarter of this year, 2026, the editor-in-chief, Mr. Giorgio Gasperoni, contributes a concise and incisive editorial on human rights titled Dignità e legge naturale, Dignity and Natural Law. Gasperoni begins with a sharp observation. The expression human rights is now used everywhere, which makes it vulnerable to misunderstandings, distortions, and even manipulation. I vividly recall a pleasant yet serious conversation over bubble tea in the cafeteria of the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall in Taipei, Republic of China in Taiwan, a few years ago. During a visit by scholars, journalists, and activists, my good friends and outstanding defenders of religious liberty, Willy Fautre and Hans Noth, discussed with me the ambiguity and sometimes the outright vagueness of the term human dignity, a phrase that can be invoked to justify almost anything. In his editorial, Gasperoni calls for a return clarity, and to the original meaning of human dignity. It traces its roots to three sources: the medieval philosopher and theologian Thomas Aquinas, the school of Salamanca in the 16th century Spain, and the Dominican priest and bishop Bartolomé de las Casas. His argument can be summarized as follows. For Aquinas, human dignity comes from being created by God in his image. It is not a reward or a feeling, but an ontological condition that carries ethical obligations. Dignity belongs to human nature by virtue of this divine origin. Morality flows directly from this essence. It is not a secondary layer that can be manipulated or exploited. In this light, natural law is not, as caricatured today, a mere list of prohibitions. It is the participation of human reason in the order of justice established by God in creation. When Europeans encountered the Americas in the 15th century, the School of Salamanca expanded Aquinas' framework. Its scholars concluded that the peoples newly encountered in distant lands shared the same human nature as Europeans, despite cultural and religious differences, and were therefore entitled to the same protections. State power was thus limited, and rights belonged not only to rulers, but to all persons. From this reflection emerged the concept of jus gentium, the law of peoples, which became the foundation of international law. It can be described as both the universal extension of human dignity and the principle of governing relations among states. Las Casas then translated these philosophical principles into concrete historical and political debates. Despite some misunderstandings and exaggerations, his contribution remains of great philosophical importance because he brought the discussion out of theory and into the realm of lived human conflict. These three pillars of reflection on human dignity and international relations are Catholic in origin. As I have noted on other public occasions, I do not emphasize their importance simply because I am Catholic. UPF, WFWP, and Voci di Pace are not Catholic organizations. Yet they take their work seriously, just as I am to do when highlighting the relevance of this editorial and its appeal to universal principles. I often recall that the Irish Christian writer and apologist C.S. Lewis referred to natural law as the Tao. He chose this term to avoid confessional labels and to underscore its universality. His choice also resonates with non-Western, especially Asian audiences. I recall it again today as we considering the astonishing and deeply troubling case of Tai Ji Men. The Tai Ji Men case concerns both human dignity and natural law. The staggering injustice inflicted on Tai Ji Men Shifu, or grandmaster, and Dizi, disciples, for 30 years and still ongoing today is above all a violation of what it means to be human. A peaceful community of patriots and law-abiding citizens has been targeted for ideological reasons and continually harassed by corrupt bureaucrats driven by greed, even though every level of Taiwanese judiciary, including the Supreme Court, has cleared Tai Ji Men of all false charges. The cases themselves show that the accusations were deliberately fabricated, including allegations of tax evasion and even black magic. This is, first and foremost, an assault on human dignity. It means being dragged into ruin and exposed to public ridicule despite complete innocence. Human dignity is violated when individuals are mistreated and defamed by a powerful entity such as the state, even though they have committed no crime. Such actions cry out for justice before God, in whose image all human beings are created. If natural law means acting in accordance with the divine order of creation, then deliberately violating justice, the highest law of creation, and the respect owed to every person is a clear breach of natural law. Yet this is precisely what has been done and continues to be done to the members of Tai Ji Men. In this paper, I have given considerable credit to Voce di Pace and to its reminder of the origins and essence of human dignity. We should remember that the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, which initiated and promoted the Universal Peace Federation, and thus Voce di Pace, is itself the target of severe religious persecution in both Japan and South Korea, where the movement was founded in 1954. In Japan, UPF is now facing a dissolution proceeding ordered by the Tokyo High Court as a religious organization. In South Korea, Park Jang-moon, Mother Moon, the widow of Reverend Moon, and the current leader of the movement, is treated as a criminal and kept in jail, despite her age and fragile health. This reinforces the idea that violations of human dignity and natural law lie at the heart of religious persecution. It brings together individuals and groups from different backgrounds to rediscover the true meaning of human dignity as a foundation for protecting religious liberty. It also calls for an alliance among all who value human dignity and natural law, encouraging them to unite in defending freedom of belief. Tai Ji Men is undeniably the victim of a profound injustice that at its core denies human dignity. On the United Nations International Day for the Right to the Truth concerning gross human rights violation and for the dignity of victims, this fact deserves to be stated clearly and publicly before the conscience of the world. If human dignity truly derives from the fact that every person is created in the image of God, then defending victims of injustice is not merely an act of solidarity, but a simple requirement of natural law. The Tai Ji Men case reminds us of nothing less than this. And with this, I conclude my conclusion, and I do thank everyone following us directly today and seeing us in future days on YouTube. And I just have to remind that we will continue our series of webinars in due time. And I salute everyone and all of you, announcing the last video, which is, as usual, a nice musical video. Thank you.
About the Tai Ji Men case, Taiwan Supreme Court found Tai Ji Men not guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. The National Tax Bureau and the Ministry of Finance laid down the promise to revoke the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned evasion, or any other charges. The National Tax Bureau and the Ministry of Finance reneged on their promise to refund the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Tai Ji Men. The land was illegally taken into state ownership. Where is the real government officials' conscience? Where are justice and human rights? What is the truth about the Tai Ji Men case? Taiwan Supreme Court found Tai Ji Men guilty of tax evasion or any other charges. The National Tax Bureau and the Ministry of Finance reneged on their promise to refund the tax bill. The National Tax Bureau illegally auctioned off the sacred land of Tai Ji Men. The land was illegally taken into state ownership. Where is the real government officials' conscience? Where are justice and human rights? The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace. The righteous people are united with conscience to defend justice, human rights, and peace.
Mhm.